It was a dark and stormy night. The rain was pouring down in sheets, and the wind howled through the trees. Mark and his girlfriend, Sarah, were driving back from a weekend getaway when their car broke down in the middle of nowhere. They were stranded, with no cell phone signal and no idea how far they were from the nearest town. Mark tried to fix the car, but the engine wouldn't start. The rain was getting heavier, and Sarah was shivering with cold. They had no choice but to leave the car and start walking. Mark remembered seeing a cabin a few miles back, and he hoped they could find shelter there until the storm passed. As they walked through the darkness, the wind seemed to whisper to them, and strange noises echoed through the trees. Sarah clung to Mark's arm, her heart racing with fear. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them from the shadows. Finally, they saw the cabin up ahead. It was old and rundown, with broken windows and a sagging roof. But it was shelter, and they hurried towards it. Inside, the cabin was musty and damp, with cobwebs clinging to the ceiling. But there was a fire burning in the hearth, and Mark and Sarah huddled together in front of it, grateful for the warmth. As they sat there, listening to the storm raging outside, they heard a faint scratching at the door. Mark got up to investigate, but Sarah begged him not to. She was sure that something was out there, something dangerous and deadly. But Mark opened the door anyway, and what he saw made his blood run cold. A figure stood in the darkness, cloaked in a long black robe. Its face was hidden in the shadows, but its eyes glinted with malevolent intent. Mark slammed the door shut and bolted it, but he knew it wouldn't hold for long. The figure outside was too powerful, too determined. And as the storm raged on, they realized that they were trapped, with no way out. As the hours passed, Mark and Sarah huddled together in terror, waiting for the dawn. But they knew that dawn might not bring salvation. The figure outside was getting closer, and they could hear its breathing, hot and fetid, on the other side of the door. In the end, they were found the next morning, huddled together in front of the hearth. The door was still bolted shut, but there was no sign of the figure that had tormented them all night. It was as if it had never existed, as if it had been a figment of their imagination. But Mark and Sarah knew the truth. They knew that something evil had come for them that dark and stormy night, and that it might come again. And so they left the cabin and never looked back. Months passed, and Mark and Sarah tried to move on with their lives. But they couldn't forget that night, couldn't forget the feeling of dread that had filled them to the core. They tried to tell themselves that it was just a trick of their imaginations, that the figure outside the cabin had been nothing more than a product of their fear. But they both knew that wasn't true. There was something out there, something malevolent and powerful, and it was coming for them. One night, as they were getting ready for bed, Sarah heard a faint scratching at the window. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Mark heard it too, and he reached for the baseball bat he kept by the bed. They crept towards the window, their breaths coming in short gasps. As they looked out into the darkness, they saw a figure standing in the shadows, its eyes gleaming in the moonlight. Mark swung the bat, but the figure was too quick. It slipped away into the darkness, leaving them standing there, trembling with fear. After that night, the figure started to visit them more frequently. It would scratch at their windows and doors, whispering their names in a voice that chilled them to the bone. They tried to run, tried to hide, but it always found them. Finally, they decided to seek out the help of a local psychic. The psychic listened to their story and nodded gravely. "There is something evil that has attached itself to you," she said. "Something that wants to consume your very souls." She performed a cleansing ritual, burning sage and chanting ancient incantations. For a time, it seemed as though the figure had been banished. But then it returned, stronger and more malevolent than ever before. Mark and Sarah knew that they were running out of options. They could feel the darkness closing in around them, could feel the figure's breath on their necks. They knew that they would have to face it, to confront it head on. They spent days preparing themselves, gathering weapons and studying ancient texts. And then, one night, they stood together in the darkness, facing the figure that had haunted them for so long. It was a fierce battle, one that left them bruised and battered. But in the end, they emerged victorious, the figure vanishing into the night. Mark and Sarah never spoke of that night again. But they both knew that they had been changed forever, that they had stared into the abyss and emerged, somehow still alive. And as they looked out into the night, they knew that the darkness was still there, waiting for its next opportunity to consume them. Years passed, and Mark and Sarah moved to a new city, hoping to leave the darkness behind. They tried to forget the figure that had haunted them, tried to convince themselves that it had been a figment of their imaginations. But they both knew the truth. They knew that the darkness was still out there, waiting for its chance to strike. One night, as they were sitting in their living room, they heard a faint scratching at the door. Mark and Sarah froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. They knew that sound, knew it all too well. Mark got up and walked towards the door, his hand trembling. He reached for the doorknob, but hesitated. What if it was the darkness, come to consume them once again? But Sarah urged him on, and he opened the door. There was no one there, no figure lurking in the darkness. But as Mark looked out into the night, he saw something that made his blood run cold. It was a faint glow, hovering in the distance, like a beacon calling to him. He knew what it was, knew that it was the darkness, come to claim them once again. Mark and Sarah gathered their weapons and set out into the night. They walked for hours, their hearts heavy with fear. And then they saw it. The darkness looming in the distance like a great black cloud. They approached it cautiously, their weapons at the ready. And then they stepped into it. The darkness consumed them, wrapping around them like a cold, wet blanket. They could hear the whispers, could feel the breath of the figure on their necks. But then something miraculous happened. The darkness began to fade, the whispers growing fainter and fainter. And as they emerged on the other side, they saw something that made their hearts soar. It was a bright, shining light, like a beacon of hope. And as they approached it, they knew that they had finally defeated the darkness once and for all. Mark and Sarah never spoke of that night again. But they both knew that they had faced their greatest fears, had stared into the abyss and emerged, somehow still alive. And as they looked out into the night, they knew that the darkness was still there, waiting for its next opportunity to consume them. But they also knew that they were stronger now, that they had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. And they knew that they would never forget that dark and stormy night, the night that had changed their lives forever.